The cities, the struggles, the triumphs, the men, the women, the making of black mayors.
Chicago is not perfect. No other city is perfect, but I submit to you, Chicago is working now better than it's ever worked in my life.
And I will indeed work with you in every way I can.
I didn't want to leave Congress to go to the UN. I didn't want to leave the UN to come back here, but it all seemed to work out much better than I could have planned it.
And this purely political gimmick that Mr. Ferraro is raising is attempting to divert attention from what has been done.
Hello, I'm Terry Carter, your host for this 2-hour special, The Making of Black Mayors. We're going to spend the next 2 hours looking at the phenomenon of black American mayors. Who are they? What differences have they made in the cities they govern? Cities often blighted by crises of a decaying business base, poor public education systems, and crime. Black mayors make up one of the fastest growing forces on the political landscape. We'll be talking to Republicans, Democrats, and independents. There are men and women, young and old. We want to know what goes into the grooming of the black mayors of today. In 28 of the 50 United States, they govern over 300 places. 30 of those are cities with more than 20,000 residents. Altogether, they govern over 14 million citizens. The numbers are impressive, but do numbers alone translate into political power? Just how effective are black mayors?
I think that the growth of black mayors is a sign of progressiveness within this country. That my experience in the cities that I operate in, the cities are doing better now with black mayors than they did 10 and 20 years ago. So I see a very, very positive trend in the major cities and some of the minor cities that have elected black mayors. Plus, they're being reelected, which means that the general population is pleased with the way the cities and their governments and administrations are performing.
The 15-year-old Joint Center for Political Studies in Washington, D.C. does economic and social research and analysis having to do with black political behavior. Mr. Eddie Williams is its president.
Today we have some 286 black mayors in the United States, covering everything from little hamlets of 25 or 30 people to metropolis like Los Angeles, Chicago, Detroit, and Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C. So they really span the gamut. The most recent phenomenon we have seen, I should point out that of the 286, we saw a significant increase in 1984 of 31 new black mayors. Now, we're still trying to understand why that level of increase. Overall, there are almost 6,100 black elected officials in the United States, and in 1984, their number went up close to 7%. The previous year, it was only 1.6%. So it is reasonable to assume that something occurred in 1983, 84, that had some impact on black politics. One can point to the increasing politicization of the black community, the impact of the Harold Washington election, of the Wilson Goode election. Certainly one can point to the phenomenon of Jesse Jackson, which led to an increase in voter registration and an increase in political consciousness. And no doubt there are many other factors that contributed to that.
When the 1870s brought an end to the Civil War, those first 50 years of freedom saw blacks' early exercises in self-government. All black towns like Nicodemus, Kansas, and Mound Bayou, Mississippi were formed. Freed slaves settled several Oklahoma towns. In fact, Oklahoma was once targeted for the creation of an all-black state. The nation's first black mayors came from such communities. The Reconstruction government of Mississippi saw the election of the first black mayor of a sizable city when Robert Woods became mayor of Natchez in 1870. It is a bit ironic that the state most identified with racism in this century had one of the largest representations of black elected officials then. Today, over 100 years later, the southern states have the largest concentration of black elected officials, especially mayors. One of the most prominent of them is the mayor of a small Alabama town with a rich history. The town is Tuskegee, and the mayor is Johnny Ford. We asked Mayor Ford what motivated him to run for office.
When I was 13 years old, and I remember it well, about 4 of us had to peep through the fence and watch the little white boys and girls swimming in the swimming pools, playing baseball in the public parks. And I noticed a bronze plaque on the big fence, on the big gate there, which said, Mayor Frank Carr. And I remember turning to my colleagues and I said to them, you know, one day I'd like to be mayor of this town so that we can tear down these fences and open up these parks so that all of the children of this city will be able to run and play in the public facilities.
Now, did you really say that?
I really said that, and I have witnesses. Well, they all thought I was crazy.
Do you enjoy being mayor?
I do, because it provides an opportunity for one to be of true service to the people. The position of mayor, that's why the position of mayor is so important. The mayor is the elected official who's closest to the people. The mayor of a city has an opportunity to share the frustrations and the headaches of the cities, but he can also experience the joys of serving in the cities. When we see people who are employed and have better homes and who are able to meet their own responsibilities, when we're able to impact upon improving the quality of life in the cities of America and the world, then that's very rewarding. And so those of us who are mayors, I see the role of the mayor becoming an increasing one as we move toward the year 2000.
Tell me a little about the black-white relationship in Tuskegee. How it has, what was it like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and what is it like today? Has it changed?
It was a very tense campaign, obviously. I'm the first African-American elected as mayor of the city. Of course, many people thought that, well, they said that once I was elected, many of the whites would leave. There would be a great exodus. Well, that has not been. As a matter of fact, many whites are coming back, particularly into the city, and younger persons are coming back, and we're very pleased about it. My feeling about this is that we ought to be fair. I don't think that African Americans, once we are elected to office, we ought to turn the clock back and try to take advantage of the white citizens because they're in the minority. I think we ought to be responsive to the needs of all of our citizens, and that's what we try to do in our city.
No, Johnny Ford wasn't crazy for dreaming of being mayor. He is the principal founder of the National Conference of Black Mayors. It has become the network, the lobby group for black mayors across the nation. We're going to meet more of the mayors shortly. We'll be going into the city halls and lives of people like James Chase, mayor of the nearly all-white city, Spokane, Washington. Thurman Milner, the only black mayor of a New England city. We'll be talking to big city mayors like Andrew Young and Harold Washington with their big city challenges and problems. All that and more coming up.
We must leave racial battleground and come to economic common ground and moral higher ground. America, our time has come.
Welcome back. Networking has been the buzzword of the 80s, and the black mayors are no exception. In April 1985, hundreds of people attended the 11th Annual National Conference of Black Mayors in Hartford, Connecticut. The black mayors came together for meeting, greeting, and dealing with some serious issues. The tough items of federal budget cutbacks and affirmative action were high on the agenda. We asked Federal Housing Secretary Pierce about the mayors' fears of less money for their cities.
Well, I think, first of all, we must remember that we have a national deficit that is tremendous. We must start resolving that problem, reducing that national deficit. If we're not able to do that successfully within the next several years, then this whole nation is going to have terrible economic trouble. We may well slide into a situation like we had in 1929, and that was a terrible thing. If that happens, then we won't have money for the poor, for the black, for anybody.
We questioned Washington Mayor Marion Barry about what the mayors plan to do regarding affirmative action reversals.
Well, mayors that we've talked to vigorously disagree with the new public policy as it affects affirmative action. We believe very strongly that past practice of discrimination has to be corrected. They can be corrected with goals and timetables. They can be corrected with race or sex-conscious type of efforts. And I suspect that most of the mayors will do what I have to do in Washington, go into court.
The 60s, civil rights were won by tears, sweat, and blood. Streets of fire gave way to black pride and black power rising from the ashes. Change blew like a storm through American cities. In 1967, Ohio legislator Carl Stokes was elected mayor of Cleveland, the first black to head a major American city. Next, Gary, Indiana elected Richard Hatcher, and Ken Gibson fought his way to victory in Newark, New Jersey. This was a turning point in American history, a major breakthrough for black elected officials. Or was it? Just what kind of shape were these cities in?
I think what is beginning to happen is you get black mayors and you're getting decent young mayors, black or white or women, are coming into these cities when the old hardline politicians have milked them as much as they can. I mean, they're chaotic, they're at the midst of going wrong, and they hold them together with spit and bubble gum.
My troubles had just started, and I didn't realize it when I was out doing all this campaigning. My fire truck is on the blink. My garbage truck is not running. I need vehicles to do things in the city. Everything's broken down, and I need money.
Despite inheriting some difficult situations, during the past 20 years of black mayorship, these players in the political power game have become increasingly sophisticated, both as front-runners and just plain runners. Many have been encouraged to hit the campaign trail. Let's look at some recent mayoral races and see how they run.
I am here to formally announce my run for the mayor of the city of New York.
New York Assemblyman Herman Denny Farrell tossed his hat into the ring, dramatically challenging incumbent Mayor Koch.
I think the issue on on February 11th, is not who is Herman Farrell, but what does he represent.
And I go all around this city, and all the neighborhoods I go into, the one thing that is coming through over and over and over again, there is an increased spirit in the city. There is a good feeling taking place around the city. There is a willingness on the part of people in all parts of our city, in all of those neighborhoods, to work with government to bring about improvement.
We're not going to have much TV, don't care. We're going to have more radio, not enough. But we've got you, everyone here, everyone listening. In the words of Andy Young, we're going to be fair, we're going to be open, we're going to be impartial, we're going to bring this city back, we're going to heal it, we're going to unify, we're going to make it a great Chicago. Thank you very much.
With the explosion of black elected officials serving as a beacon for others with political ambitions and ability, we expect to see many more run for City Hall. Later this hour, we'll get more from controversial Chicago Mayor Harold Washington. In the 80s, the election of a black mayor is no longer considered a fluke, and the mayors are more than symbolic figures. It has been said that black mayors are handicapped by their lack of connections and influence in the business communities. They quickly find out that politics and business are closely linked, and the power in a city is not always where you think.
We should always remember that mayors do not control the power in the cities. The real power in the city is controlled by the people who control the economics of the city. Those are the businesses, usually the biggest businesses in the city. The first thing that I did before I was elected was to go to meet with the chairman of the board of the major corporations in the city of Newark. Inform them that I was going to be the mayor. They thought I was kidding. And tell them that we needed their help since they owned the economic power and I would be responsible for the public service. It was what I call enlightened self-interest on their part to form a partnership with this new kid on the block, if you will. And it's worked ever since. Other mayors have done that and it still works.
Well, the first thing I did was to establish a pattern of meeting with the presidents of the major corporations regularly. at least on a quarterly basis. The chief executive officers of the 25 major Atlanta-based corporations are invited to lunch with me. In the early days, I would discuss things with them in advance. I'd try to explain to them what I was doing and why. I go to them when I need support. But the main ingredient is giving them a feeling that they are part of the partnership.
The National Conference of Black Mayors has only one member in all of New England, and he is Thurman Milner, a third-generation Hartford, Connecticut native. Before speaking with Mayor Milner, let's hear from some Hartford residents.
He's a good mayor. I think there's some things here that which he's been trying to enact, such as one, the development program, downtown development, providing incentives, you know, for developers to plow back the money back into the neighborhoods. I think that's a very good idea. It's a very aggressive idea.
If he runs for re-election, would you vote for him?
I'm a Democrat, so I vote Democratic. I would rather see somebody else, but I vote Democratic.
Well, he seems to be doing a good job. The city seems to be progressing well.
Do you feel that you were hired, that you were elected as a mayor because you were black, or irrespective of the fact that you were black?
In spite of the fact that I was black. I went through, in 1981 when I ran, I went through an election where I lost by 97 votes. We challenged that election in court based on the absentee ballots. The first time in our state's history, the courts overthrew an election. We had a second primary, and I won that second primary, and then won the general election. So that year I had 3 elections to become the first black mayor in New England.
Did the job of mayor turn out to be bigger than you expected it to be?
Yes, it did. When I served in the General Assembly, I had a buffer between me and the people, sitting up at the Capitol, which is here in the city of Hartford. But as mayor, you're on the front line. People call you constantly for a lot of things you're not responsible for. You know, sometimes I just shake my head and wonder why I'm here as mayor of the city of Hartford.
Why are you here?
Well, I'm here, I think, because I believe in going in and doing what I can and then moving ahead. We are making some progress in the city of Hartford. Some of the programs and aspirations that I had are beginning to take place.
If you had it all to do over again, would you do it again?
I don't know. It's hard to answer. I think because of the accomplishments and the pride that I think has been instilled in young people in the city of Hartford, I probably would. For my own personal sake, I would not.
Why not?
It's a tough job. It's a 24-hour job almost. It's almost a thankless job, and there's a lot of work involved in it. It takes away from your personal life. You have no personal life. And being the first black of anything, you're constantly in the fishbowl. You're constantly in the limelight. And the expectations for the black community as well as the white community are much higher.
Don't let those downbeat comments fool you. Mayor Milner did run again and was reelected. Despite the difficulties of being mayor of any urban area in our country, there are a few who seem to thrive on huge political challenges. We'll meet Andrew Young of Atlanta later this hour. And when we come back, you'll have a look at the infamous council wars in Chicago.
You look around at any black mayor, and the record will show that the most representative government, the most democratic decision-making, has come about as a result of people who have themselves been locked out most of the time, and who know the dangers of locking out people.
Going to Chicago. Sorry, but I can't take you.
And I'm not going to allow the energies of being the mayor of Chicago to be diluted by whatever candidates may file.
Going to Chicago.
I am a person who has dedicated his life to public service.
I used to think that Harold was not only an amiable fellow, but an intelligent fellow. I guess I'm wrong on both counts.
And that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of mayor of the city of Chicago.
According to the best of my ability.
According to the best of my ability.
Congratulations, Mayor.
On that inauguration day in 1983, Chicago politics changed. A local comedian coined the term council wars to describe the antics when Chicago's aldermanic armies battle at city council meetings. The primary confrontations are between Harold Washington, the city's first black mayor, and power broker alderman Edward Verdoliak, a representative of the Democratic machine's old guard. Washington once threatened to punch Verdoliak in the mouth during an angry exchange. Mayor Washington's difficult fight to reform Chicago politics has gotten the attention of other black mayors and leaders.
A man who's taken on a very tough job and done it very well. It's almost an impossible job, but he's beginning to make Chicago make sense.
He was qualified to be mayor, did not have the financial backing, and had the low expectations projected by the media. But when Harold hit that stage to debate, his sheer brilliance, his superiority came through. Not only did it inspire black people in a tremendous way, but it gained the respect of a broad cross-section of white people who knew that they had in this man an intellectual and a political force and factor that could not be dismissed easily.
Now, like Washington and Chicago, I feel sorry for that man.
Is this what you want to do? Is this the way we're supposed to come together? Is this the way you want to organize this council? Is this the way you want to organize this city? Is that what you want to do?
Tell me about your fight with Ed Verdoliak. Has that fight changed in nature, or is it similar to what it was when you were first?
It's been quelled. It was a mismatch from the beginning. He was up against something he couldn't deal with, and so he's gradually pulled back and retreated, not into the distance, but he's retreated.
Well, do you work together?
Oh, you work every day. You know, it's a misconception for people to assume that because you argue with your opponent that your job's not being done. Accommodations have to be made and are made every day in a week. 99 point everything we put in comes out in more or less the same way we put it in. Where the problem has been is that in certain areas, the council has been totally irresponsible. For example, they've sat on some appointments inordinately. They have tried to block certain key pieces of legislation for no reason other than to be capricious, recalcitrant, and just plain mean. What I'm saying is this. I'm not here to praise the council. They've got a long way to go. I just introduced them to parliamentary procedure a year ago, and they haven't quite mastered it yet. Some of them can read, which is, a monumental leap forward. They've got a long way to go, but they have improved immeasurably, and I laud them for that.
Mayor Washington, have you been able to heal some of the rifts in your city?
We think so. It's a slow process. It doesn't happen overnight. But I think you can see the evidence of the healing process in the recent polls that were taken. The recent polls, I think there were 2 that were published. The question was asked, would you support the mayor today? And the answer was yes, by 54-point-something%, which is about 3 points higher than what we got when we were elected. So clearly there's been incremental change upwardly insofar as that's concerned.
By refusing to cut a deal with Verdoliak for power in the city, Mayor Washington has a continuing fight on his hands. Though he has trouble finding affection at city council meetings, the mayor is able to relax under other circumstances. We followed him to ceremonies renaming 43rd Street as Muddy Waters Drive.
I can deal with all this love, believe me, I can deal with it. And if you don't believe it, listen to this. I'd rather drink muddy water, sleep in a hollow. And I see young people out here, and what you see, in a sense, is a continuum and a sense of black history standing out on this street. This street is now named King Drive. A few years ago, it was South Parkway. When I was a little boy living across from the Grits down the street at 3936 South Parkway, it was called the Grand Boulevard. I've lived through all that history.
Mayor Washington, lots of young people look upon you as a role model. Do you have anything that you'd like to pass on to future black mayors of America?
One, you have to have some conception of what's wrong with the world and your city, and you must have some idea about how to go about resolving it. So you've got to study. You just can't walk in and full-bodied as though from the brow of Athena and start doing things. You got to work. 2, you should stand for something. Courage, not stubbornness, but courage. If you believe in something, believe in it. Don't be like a lot of politicians, just go with the wind, because that's what's wrong, and that's why politicians lack credibility.
The next mayoral election is in 1987, but the campaign is already on, as ex-mayor Jane Byrne wants her job back. Later this hour, we'll visit Boston and New York, which have had black candidates, but no black mayors. I'll be back after these messages. Just who is the typical all-American black mayor, or is there such a person? While there is no profile carved in stone, the statistics begin to paint a picture. According to the Joint Center for Political Studies, the average U.S. black mayor is a middle-aged, highly educated, upwardly mobile male affiliated with the Democratic Party. We asked Eddie Williams of the Joint Center about the historical relationship of blacks with the Democratic Party and whether that is shifting.
Let's look at the black electorate. You know, prior to 1936, blacks were monolithically Republicans. I mean, they were supporting the party of Lincoln. And it really was not until the second Roosevelt election in 1936 that blacks started to move toward the Democratic Party, as indeed many other Americans. That coalition that Roosevelt put together that had to do with blacks and labor and intellectuals and Jews and whatnot. And so blacks have remained fairly loyal in the Democratic Party up through today. The Republican Party probably has committed to it today some 8 to 10% of the black electorate. Will that change? Yes, and I think we are seeing some very interesting developments in the Republican Party now, making overtures to the black community, particularly at senior levels.
I think that black Americans have got to become politically sophisticated enough to understand that you can't sell your votes totally to either one party or the other. We were totally raped by the Democratic Party in this last election. For example, for the mayor of Chicago to be ignored by Walter Mondale of the Democratic Convention was totally absurd.
We'll have more from the outspoken mayor officer of East St. Louis. He and many other mayors don't fit the standard profile. Mayors like Unita Blackwell of Mayersville, a town of about 1,000 people in Mississippi. We wanted to know if Mayor Blackwell was a first.
I'm the first black woman mayor of the state of Mississippi, and in 1976 was when we incorporated.
What was the experience like for you on a personal level?
It was disbelief. A lot of people didn't believe that I was a mayor. They just couldn't think of a woman being a mayor, and black woman mayor. I went through a lot of just kind of ignoring the whole thing, but between, I guess I can say that we just kept pushing, and so they got to the place they recognized that we were there and that I was the mayor, and that's the way it is.
Mayor Smith, how did a Republican get to be elected in a Democratic country?
Well, it's a question of issues now. I think people are now evaluating personalities, the capability of the personality, and whether or not the personality match with the issues at hand that are affecting the community. And now people are becoming sophisticated at selecting leaders.
What did you promise to the people?
Zero, that I would work hard and give them an opportunity to participate in building their own government. I can't offer them one. It's a democratic society. Simply said that representative democracy has failed. It's a participatory democracy now. You must now participate in your government.
How are you allowing them to participate in ways that they did not?
Well, there are several ways. One is to organize a structure within the government that we call our town assembly that, in fact, demand that people make certain decisions about how the government operate, that no longer do they have the luxury of waiting 4 years to criticize an administration that may have possibly failed, that they must vote and then they must participate in decisions about money and be aware of how money is generated, how it's spent, and how they may even be contributing to their own demise by spending their dollars in other places, or not properly promoting and keeping up their own neighborhood and their own communities.
Mayor Officer, there are a lot of cities across the country that have a magnificent waterfront development, and yet they still have squalor and unemployment. Is that characteristic of East St. Louis as well?
Certainly, but I think it's more characteristic of the mentality we have in Washington that doesn't understand the realities of American urban areas. Particularly this present administration, they seem to have a total disregard for cities and a total misunderstanding of what America's urban lives and the problems that American urban communities run with. I think this is a major portion, one of poor leadership by many mayors.
Well, what about you now? Are you suggesting that moral considerations would transcend economic considerations in your own case?
I'm for cutting a deal with whomever will make a deal for my city. That's who I represent as my constituents. So, I mean, if you had to be communist, it makes me no difference. If you're going to take care of my folks, feed them, clothe them, house them, take care of their health care, then we can talk a deal, but it's not a permanent deal. It's a little bit like a driver's license. It has to be renewed.
At the time of his election in '79, Carl Officer was the youngest black mayor of a metropolitan area. We'll meet other non-traditional mayors later in our show. We'll also be looking at the long, eventful career of Atlanta Mayor Andrew Young and see how the city is faring under his leadership.
Georgia, Georgia, the whole day through.
Well, it's a clean city and a great city. There's a lot of progress in this city, a lot of industry.
Well, the traffic's a little worse than I'd expected, but coming from L.A., it's still a bargain.
I'd have more resources for blacks.
Andy's a good PR man. He really sells this city to everybody in the world and tells them how great we are. And with a growing city like Atlanta, we need a mayor like this, who's not going to sit around City Hall and say, let the rest of the world pass us by, where he's out there pitching for us and saying, come on the South, because this is where it's happening.
Well, that's one of the reasons why we've got $20 billion worth of new investment. Much of that is foreign investment. It also helps with the American business community to know that Japanese investors, French investors, German investors, Dutch investors, British investors are interested in Atlanta.
The frequently traveling and sometimes controversial Mayor Andrew Young of Atlanta, Georgia, flower of the South. If you wanted a mayoral success story, this could be it. This bustling city of 500,000 has had 4 straight terms of black mayorship. Maynard Jackson served 3 terms, but was prevented by law from seeking re-election. Enter Andrew Young, describing himself.
I'm whatever type person I need to be at the time. I can be as laid back, but I also like to fight. And when it's time, I mean, you can't let people push you around. And yet the decision to fight, the decision to confront people, the decision to take on the struggle is never an emotional decision. It's something, I mean, almost everything I've ever said that ended up controversial, I knew I was saying it. And I thought about it and decided it needed to be said, so I said it. Because I don't want the Carter administration, and because I don't want Secretary Vance to have to take the blame for the decisions that I felt that I had to make, decisions which I still feel were very much in the interest of this nation, I think it best that I remove myself from the formal employ of the government and pursue my interest in foreign and domestic policy as a private citizen.
Former Atlanta Mayor Maynard Jackson has been credited with creating a renaissance for that city, unparalleled by any other American city. We asked him if today's mayors have the same opportunities.
I do feel that those opportunities are available. I think one of the things we have to do, though, of course, is to be unafraid to use our power when we have it. Use it for what is right, set a policy, be sure that everybody understands it. Be sure that it's legally sound. Be sure that it's fair. And then enforce it vigorously.
Atlanta did develop a very successful affirmative action attitude, which Mayor Young has continued.
One of the things we had to do in the first term was to sort of get the business community to understand that the reason why Atlanta was growing so and doing so well was that there was a coalition between black politics and white money. And as long as both were moving forward successfully, everybody would profit.
The negative side of living in Atlanta is nobody comes downtown anymore to the heart of the city. They all leave it at night and go out to the suburbs.
But now what we have to do, that we've sort of established this as a growth city, we've got to improve the quality of life in downtown, and that means developing some housing in downtown Atlanta. It's very hard to find adequate housing in the city of Atlanta that's affordable right now.
Race relations in Atlanta seem to be better than in many cities, possibly because of minority participation in its business life. Here is Mr. Herman Russell, a businessman with interests in several cities.
What I said about Atlanta is universally true
in every major city in the country where you have a black mayor. That's Los Angeles, Detroit, Philadelphia, Chicago, you name it. You will see great opportunity for minority participation.
Coca-Cola has always had a philosophy of being a good corporate citizen, and certainly in our hometown, we try to be very aggressive in doing that. One of the things that I'm proud of as a member of this company is that we, in our 100th year, are building a mammoth new facility that is just outside my window, and that is a $100 million facility. Well, 35% of that project is being done by minorities who were brought in as a result of our relationship with the mayor and the city administration. And I think that's significant because that creates jobs in Atlanta, which is a predominantly black city, and it also makes things very good for the mayor because it shows that business and the mayor can cooperate for the good of all of the people. And those are the type of things that we are very interested in and that the company has always supported.
Despite breakaway support for his opponents, Young won his 1985 election with a comfortable 55% of the vote. With the race behind him, Mayor Young felt free to tell us of his long-term vision for Atlanta.
I see Atlanta as a kind of a city that becomes the gateway of America's contribution to dealing with the problems of the third world. And I see people from the third world coming into Atlanta as a place to do business where they can deal with a community that's learned to live black and white together and be respected, where they can feel like they can get American technology and American products without getting ripped off. And I see us becoming really one of the great cities in the world for the 21st century.
Atlanta is still wrestling with a stagnating tax base and continued white flight, and the dream is a distance away. Black mayoral candidates in other cities haven't been so fortunate. New York City, for instance, is the only one of the nation's top 3 cities without the black mayor experience, and Boston, some might say, will never be ready for a black mayor. We'll talk to 2 candidates from those cities, Denny Farrell and Mel King, next. It has been suggested that black mayors are elected only after a prior defeat has paved the way. In other words, lose to win. That certainly was the case in Los Angeles, where Tom Bradley unsuccessfully challenged incumbent conservative mayor Sam Yorty in 1969 before winning in '73. Eddie Williams of the Joint Center for Political Studies talked about the ingredients for making a black mayor.
Well, I think there are a number of ingredients. The first one, of course, is electability, and that covers a number of concerns and qualifications. Another characteristic for winning office and retaining that office for any significant period of time is the ability to govern, to use the tools of management, of administration, of planning, and of budgeting, to be able to develop coalitions.
Of the 3 largest cities in America, New York is the one that does not have a black mayor. Assemblyman Denny Farrell attempted to change all of that in the September Democratic primary in a campaign based on issues rather than color.
I am here to formally announce my run for the mayor of the city of New York.
Herman Denny Farrell is a 20-year politician at the county and state level. People across America know the name of Ed Koch, New York's incumbent mayor, but Mr. Farrell is not nearly as visible. For that reason, he decided to wage a campaign based on racial coalition and issues.
Well, in New York City, if you, as I said before, if you add together the blacks, the Puerto Ricans, the Latinos, the Oriental Americans, you would find that we run somewhere between 48 and 49% of the total population. I think putting a coalition of that form together, also based on the fact that the black and Latinos are now registering higher than any other group and voting higher as Democrats than any other group, I think we would be able to put a coalition together that would work. You have liberal whites that will be involved. You have labor unions that will be involved in these forms of coalition building. But I think before you can start, you have to start with, I use the term minority to begin with. It's my belief that you must come from a basis of power.
What do you think you can accomplish as mayor in concrete terms?
We have a mayor now that only thinks about containment. He thinks about prisons. He doesn't think about a parole department. He doesn't think that maybe we can change people. Maybe we can help people fulfill their aspirations. That philosophy, I don't think is New York's philosophy. New York's philosophy is, we are New York. We can do anything we want to do, and we can do it better. I'm going to help fulfill that philosophy as a mayor.
Do you feel New York is ready for a black mayor?
Oh, we've been ready for a black mayor for a very long time. The question is, will we elect one? And I think we will.
Denny Farrell was wrong this time. He didn't get past the New York primaries. He hopes that his loss was only a setback and not the end of the story. Boston is a city where people take their politics seriously, and it has a history of tough racial confrontations over busing and other issues. In 1983, an activist professor from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Mel King, made a run for Boston City Hall. We visited him at MIT and asked if he felt that Boston is ready for a black mayor.
For me, it's not a question of whether anybody is ready for anything. I think people are ready for leadership that is going to deal with the issues and things that concern them in their lives. So I've gone out and campaigned, and I go everywhere with the belief that people have the capacity to change, that they want to change, and that people don't want to exist in a racial, hostile environment.
Mr. Little, Mel King ran against Ray Flynn in 1983, and you supported Mel King. Why?
I thought Mel had a better capacity of bringing the total city together under one flagship, so to speak. Mr. Flynn had a lot of things I was kind of wary about in his past, i.e. the busing issue and his leadership against the busing and all the violence that occurred from that point. It made me doubt his sincerity in dealing with the minority communities in this city.
The mayor's office in Boston is not as lily-white as some might think. We went there to speak with Commissioner Ben Thompson, senior advisor to Mayor Ray Flynn. In the 1983 election, Mel King, the black candidate, ran against Ray Flynn, a white candidate, and you supported Ray Flynn. Why?
Well, Terry, there were a number of reasons, and I think it speaks to my political philosophy. To go back a little, one of the disagreements I've had historically with some of the political camps in Boston is that I think as members of what couldn't be or can be considered a swing minority voting bloc in the city of Boston, as we are in many states, I've always felt that we need to be involved in every party and every camp. We need to have black Republicans. We need to have black independents. We need to have blacks who are involved with different candidates who are running for mayor. The ultimate choice was one of who would best run the city. That cuts across color lines. I chose to work for Ray Flynn because I thought he would do the best job of bringing the city together and taking us into the 1990s.
Why do you think Mel King lost?
I think in the final analysis, it came to the fact that not enough of the minority community came out in the final election. Say 65% of them came out, and the quote-unquote lily white communities of West Roxbury, Hyde Park, and whatever came out 85% and mostly voted for Ray Flynn.
Why do you suppose you were not elected, sir?
Well, probably didn't put the organizational effort together in a way that would have overcome some of the serious things that part of the city. However, the fact is that the story about Boston and the attitudes of lots of people are very difficult to overcome.
Mel King is keeping his options open to run again for mayor or state or federal office. Sometimes called the New Atlanta, Charlotte, North Carolina elected Harvey Gantt. He has the difficult challenge of controlling explosive growth in his city, but that's not the only thing that turns him on.
I'm turned on when I go into an elementary school, as I did this morning, to talk to some young people and to see on the faces of a black child from a public housing project a relationship there. He's relating to me. He is liking to see this guy who is the mayor, who seems very sharp, and I see him saying, mentally almost, as I look at him, he's saying, you know, I can do that. I can be that one day. Or I can be a Terry Carter.
I'm your host, Terry Carter. Please join me for part 2 of the making of Black Mayor.
I haven't had time to think about being the first black woman mayor. I've been more concerned about being mayor.
Black mayors, by and large, have a broader perspective. They bring a greater depth of understanding of the problems of all people.
Now, the issue is not just my getting across the finish line as a lead horse, but having a wagon full, pulling other people in the wagon. I'd rather get across later with a wagon full than get across first by myself.
The Making of Black Mayors, Part 2.
Many of the elected officials that Reverend Jesse Jackson refers to as a wagon full are the black mayors of our nation. Black America has both influenced and been affected by the winds of change that have swept through our country, from Revolution to Reconstruction, from the Amistad Act of 1841 to the Voting Rights Act of 1965. There have been victories and setbacks. Nothing better illustrates this ongoing political metamorphosis than the phenomenon of black mayors. I'm Terry Carter. Welcome to Part 2 of The Making of Black Mayors. We tend to think of black mayorship as something relatively new, but black mayors have been around for the past 100 years. Up until 20 years ago, there were just a handful of them, heading primarily black rural communities. With the 60s came the first crop of big city black mayors, the trailblazers. One of them is a former civil engineer who had never held public office before, Ken Gibson, the 15-year mayor of struggling Newark, New Jersey.
To keep him strong, moving in the right direction, living just enough for the city.
We got involved in politics primarily because we had a conflict going on with the then administration. We could not get a fair share or a fair hearing, even, in the job market. And we decided that since we couldn't influence the mayor, then somebody should become the mayor.
So there is the responsibility to keep putting forth candidates that can stir the imagination of the people. In Newark, blacks just won't vote. They did until Ken Gibson ran.
Some people feel that Newark has never recovered from the terrible riots of 1967 and that Ken Gibson has squandered the opportunity for a rebirth of the city during 15 years in office. We spoke with two community leaders.
Well, basically, I think people look at Newark, the largest city in the state. They talk about it not being a clean city. They talk about the absence of health care for the elderly. They talk about a decreasing recreational system. Newark suffers from a bad image, you know.
The first group of problems are those that any major city has. The poverty, high numbers of individuals on welfare, decaying buildings.
We asked Mayor Gibson about his support in the community.
the basic citizens in the city of Newark support me, believe that we're trying to get the job done. The people who own property, because their tax rate has been stabilized in the city of Newark, they support us. Those people who get the improved medical services, they support us. The business community generally supports us because they've been able to do business in the city of Newark.
Gibson has proven to be a tough campaigner.
Everybody got a record, public and private. And when you step out here, everything becomes public. If you've been writing bad checks, don't run for mayor. Right? If you mistreat your wife, don't run for mayor. If you mistreat your girlfriend, don't run for mayor. If you don't take care of your children, don't run for mayor. I want to set the tone for this campaign so that anybody who comes out with their armor on, because they're going to have to survive the test.
You know, I supported him for governor, and I've supported him for each and all of his campaigns. So I'm not one of those who think that my candidacy is against a weak person. I think I'm running against a friend, a highly respected person, one of the most powerful persons in the state of New Jersey. But I just feel that the city of Newark, for it to continue to grow, for it to expand, will need new ideas, vigorous leadership, and a change in direction.
You know, anytime you have a 2-year term as mayor, you're always running for re-election. I think that's dangerous for any mayor to try to function. So the staying power in Newark is related to what we do, 4 years of office, a much more, in my opinion, supportive population, totally, in the city of Newark, and frankly, a law which allows you to run for office every 4 years rather than every 2. I think that makes a lot of difference. Whether it be a black constituency or a white constituency, you have to be fair. You can't play one group against another. You can't pretend is what I'm suggesting in this business, because that catches up with you quite quickly. And there are limits. If a city's functioning with a $300 million budget, you can't pretend that you have $2 billion.
The general feeling is that he really isn't interested in the job as mayor. He's there because the avenues haven't opened up for him to be anywhere else.
I intend to stay here. I intend to run for re-election as mayor of the city of Newark.
Whether Newark will pull out of its tailspin with the present leadership is still a question. However, 109 miles south of Newark is Atlantic City, with another story. While it has had some of the same problems as Newark, Atlantic City's thriving gambling industry holds out the promise of a new life for this old resort. But it is not all glitz and glamour.
This is the tale of two cities in Atlantic City. When Dickens said this is the best of times and this is the worst of times. In the areas where we see those casinos represents the oasis. But we still have that abject poverty, and we represent the desert there.
We asked the mayor whether gambling is the ultimate solution.
I am convinced that the casinos have been better for the people of Atlantic City than was there before the casinos. However, I am not convinced that they have been totally good for all the people of Atlantic City. Matter of fact, I have been an advocate and ombudsman for the people of Atlantic City against the casinos.
Deeply entrenched political and business interests placed several roadblocks in Jim Ussery's path to the mayor's office.
What were the impediments? The impediments were the factors that we did not have experience, no money, etc., no organization, they say, and the fact that we had to do 3 elections, 2 court cases, and 1 recall. But that makes it very, very clear to those out there who are listening that you can beat Big Brother if you have a goal, if you have a drive, if you have a motivation, and you stick to it.
Mayor James Ussery and Atlantic City will host the 1986 National Conference of Black Mayors. It has been suggested by some mayors that theirs is a pretty thankless job. Herculean problems, perplexing solutions, and small rewards. Why then does a person run for the office of mayor? We asked that question of several mayors.
Well, when I first moved back to the Birmingham area, I began to attend the council meetings, and there were a lot of things that I found that I didn't like. I'd go to the council meetings, and I'd hear the things that were going on there, and I just wasn't satisfied with them.
Well, we had a previous mayor there that really wasn't doing anything for our town, and I wanted my husband to run, and he didn't have the time. So he asked me to run, and I took the challenge and did it and won.
Just deciding to be a part of trying to do something that would be constructive in creating the kind of community in which I would like to live.
As a child, I loved the city. I felt it was my city. I felt that many of my rights within this city had been denied me, and was determined to seize those rights. And one of the ways of seizing those rights is to seize the levers of power.
It is interesting to note that many mayors talk about the difficulties of their job and then run for a second term. In our next segment, we'll look at how Hollywood brings controversy to the subject of black mayors, and we'll talk with mayors of some small cities. They find that small-town problems can be just as intimidating as those of metropolitan areas. Politicians, political analysts, the person in the street, everyone seems to have something to say about black mayors, even Hollywood. For example, the ABC network series He's the Mayor has aroused the concern of some black mayors who feel that their hard-won positions are treated too lightly by the program. And if the following is any indication, it seems that black mayorship is an idea that takes us back to the future.
One day I'm going to be somebody. That's right, he's going to be mayor. Yeah, I'm mayor. Now that's a good idea. I could run for mayor.
A colored mayor, that'll be the day.
You wait and see, Mr. Carruthers. I will be mayor. I'll be the most powerful man in Hill Valley, and I'm going to clean up this town.
Good. You can start by sweeping the floor.
Man, Goldie Wilson. I like the sound of that.
Real-life black mayors deal with some serious problems, while the young TV mayor has some important lessons to learn.
You see, son, being mayor doesn't automatically get you respect. You gotta earn it. You gotta be willing to fight for what you believe, even if we don't agree with you.
Oh, come on, Dad, you don't understand. You just can't fight City Hall.
Son, you are City Hall.
Television sometimes borrows from real life, as we see Mayor Ernest Marion of New Orleans speaking to a town meeting.
You don't have to fight City Hall anymore. You are City Hall.
Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, had one of America's first black mayors, Walter Washington. He was appointed to office and subsequently elected by popular vote. He was followed in that office by the current mayor of Washington, D.C., Marion Barry.
Well, we're unique in the sense that there's 650,000 of us who live there, who call it our home, who have the same dreams and aspirations and same challenges and opportunities that other American citizens have. But yet we don't have the right to vote for a congressman who can vote or a senator. We pay income taxes, we go to war, we do all the kind of things other Americans do, but we can't vote for our leadership in the national legislature.
Most of us probably have images of mayors as men heading sizable cities, directing massive staffs, and managing bulging civic treasuries. This is certainly not the case with most of our nation's black mayors. About 80% of them head small cities, towns, and villages. Many of them work other full-time jobs, and some don't even receive a salary for their mayoral duties. We spoke with several small-town mayors.
The reason I wanted to run for the mayor of Carlisle, to be elected as the mayor of Carlisle, was simply because there seemed to have been so many things that could be done, and it seemed that nothing was being done about it. The town of Carlisle is so small, we don't have any, our tax base is very low, and we have to depend on others to get us started. And I think this is what we needed all the time to get a start, so that we could attract industry and small business to our area so that we could, become more independent.
Mayor Lawson, tell me, what inspired you to become a mayor in the first place?
It's a small community. We only have approximately 4,000 residents of Woodlawn,
And I ran for office, and the first time I ran, I lost by 1 vote. So I wanted to inspire and to go out and find out who that one person who didn't vote for me. And once I got wrapped up in the political arena, I found that there's a lot of things and a lot of good things that can be done.
Mayor Wiley Lash represents the predominantly white town of Salisbury, North Carolina. We asked the mayor what he thought was the reason for his election success.
Well, I think that the fact that I've been there all of my life, in and out of the city, and the fact that I've been in business for 50 years, was well known in the heart of the city. My business was not an all-black business. It was an integrated business to start with.
Mayor Carl Bradford of Roosevelt City, Alabama, is fighting a desperate financial situation.
I have a city that's dying almost. I had to juggle some funds to even meet a payroll at one time. I'm going to keep hollering until somebody hears me, because I don't intend to let this city die. It's an all-black city, which is unique in itself. And come hell or high water, we're going to survive one way or the other. If I have to get out on the blocks out there and pass the cup, if necessary, we're going to hold some sort of activities to raise some money for these children, because they are our future. And if I don't do something, who can or who will? You know, I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, where I had to fight. Where I lived on William Street, where they called Dynamite Hill, doing all of this stuff around there. And another thing, during World War II, I was with the 332nd Fighter Group, a very proud and black group. We fought, we survived, we've established ourselves. We've made history, and I intend to make history again in Roosevelt City by seeing that this city survives.
Mayor Bradford's story of determination and survival is a moving one. Controversy, public image and opinion, crises of confidence. In this age of high media interest and public accountability, these are matters that can make or break the career of a public official.
The most difficult thing about this whole situation is the fact that there are children involved. And I don't take it as any kind of easy decision to take into my hand a decision regarding children.
In the aftermath of the MOVE controversy, Mayor Wilson Goode of Philadelphia will have to make some hard decisions about his political future. And in a different vein, our roster of black elected officials shows nearly 300 black mayors and 0 black governors. Could Tom Bradley, mayor of Los Angeles, become the nation's first? We'll be back to look at these men and their cities in a moment. John Hatcher has promised a plan to return East Orange to greatness in his first term. Ronald Blackwood was born on the island of Jamaica and became the first black mayor in the state of New York in 1985. Melvin Primus is working on a revitalization plan for the city of Camden, as well as being active in the JCs. Who elects black mayors? Black voters are undoubtedly their strongest political base, but there are many cities where all the black votes in town wouldn't be enough to carry a candidate across the finish line. Let's look at 2 such cities and the men who govern them. On the surface, there are similarities between Wilson Goode of Philadelphia and Tom Bradley of Los Angeles. They head 2 of the nation's largest cities, cities that are 39% and 17% black respectively. Both won their seats from old-line incumbents who were perceived as racially conservative. Both were elected in campaigns that deliberately played down the race factor. But despite these similarities, they may turn out to have radically different political futures. We asked Mayor Goode about his opinions regarding race as a major factor in voting patterns.
And I think that as long as people exist, you will have that. There's no way that we're going to end that in a short order. And therefore, I believe what you can do is try to do all you can to reduce it. And I believe it can be reduced. It can be reduced, I think, by demonstrated performance on the part of blacks who run for office and become successful, and then become successful mayors in problem solving.
Wilson Goode is the bureaucrat par excellence. He's a man who will make a city move by managing it well.
I think Philadelphia is like most other northeastern urban areas. We have a very high unemployment rate among those persons who are black, who are between the ages of 18 and 25. We have a deteriorating infrastructure. Housing is older and is deteriorating. Our water lines, our gas lines, our sewer lines, our roads, our bridges, our sidewalks, our curbs, our public buildings are all deteriorating.
Wilson Goode has inherited a great city. Then there was the move incident, which of course is still alive. The smoke is still coming from the row of houses that was burned. Before it's over, somebody's going to be indicted.
In May 1985, Philadelphia police bombed a fortified house of the Move cult. The resulting fire killed 11 people, including 5 children. Mayor Goode testified at a hearing into the tragedy.
I went through very deep emotions at that time. I cried because I knew at that point that lives would be lost, and I knew that homes would be destroyed, and I knew that that despite all of our good intentions, that we had on our hand an absolute disaster. And I can't explain to you or to anyone the kind of emotions that I went through, because everything about me is about preserving life.
The political pundits who had been mentioning Goode's name as a possible 1988 vice presidential candidate are now speculating about his political obituary. Whether Goode will be able to pull himself from the mire resulting from the Move incident remains to be seen. In contrast, Tom Bradley's political forecast seems to be sunshine and blue skies. Though his 1982 bid for the California governor's mansion was unsuccessful, his showing was impressive. He lost by less than 1 percentage point. There is little doubt that he'll run again. Though Mayor Bradley declined to be interviewed for our show, other people shared their opinions of him with us.
Tom Bradley is a rare politician in the sense that he has the capacity to draw upon general market in ways that's rare. To that extent, he gets criticism and support from all angles, and yet somehow he has been able to, in a marvelous way, kind of rise above it and keep it moving in a certain kind of way, and really parlay that into coming within 50,000 votes, becoming governor of the largest state. That is no small political feat.
It was a long run from the cotton fields of Calvert, Texas in 1917 to the Los Angeles Police Department in 1940 for Tom Bradley. He married his present wife Ethel the next year. After 21 years as a policeman, he was elected to city council in 1963. Just 2 years later, the disastrous Watts riots opened up the racial problems of Los Angeles to the world. They also started Councilman Bradley thinking of becoming Mayor Bradley.
I will use all of the energy, all of the knowledge, all of the experience that I have at my command to bring to this city an honest, hard-working administration that's going to make Los Angeles a better place in which to live.
We talked to Republican businessman and activist Celeste King.
One of the reasons why it's important to have minority-type mayors is that it becomes an appeasement to a certain portion of the city which prevents certain types of insurrections, uprising, and other things because of the fact that they cannot coalesce and mobilize against the mayor's position.
Yeah, what do you think of Mayor Bradley?
I can appreciate the stress he's under being a black mayor in a city of, it seems like 1,000 different ethnic groups. But it seems that he runs the city pretty well.
I think he's done good things for the city.
I'm not really sure about the candidates at the last election. Perhaps there was somebody that could have done a better job. We have had him in office for a while, and maybe somebody else might be able to take a new view on things and a fresh approach.
But he tries to satisfy everybody, the Jews, the blacks.
Basically, in general, Tom is a person who does not make many opinions at the time that they are relevant to an issue. And in general, it is a situation where those of us who are activists go out, we take the whipping in connection with taking positions. After the battle is over, he generally comes in and counts the bodies and makes an overall statement.
A 1985 speech-making visit to Los Angeles by controversial Muslim minister Louis Farrakhan threatened Mayor Bradley's relationship with the Jewish community. However, Bradley waited until Farrakhan had left town to speak out publicly.
I believe that the strategy was a partial success. Minister Farrakhan, for example, canceled a radio and television appearance which had been scheduled. The harsh language of the Washington, D.C. speech and the tone of hatred was not used. He toned down his words. But the sad fact is that there were passages in the speech that contained undercurrents of anti-Semitism.
I think we need a change of governors. Maybe we would do better with Mr. Bradley.
Why don't he just come right out and say he is not running for governor if that's his case? But it's not his case. He wants to run for governor again, and he will continue to campaign on issues that deal not only with the city of Los Angeles, but on statewide problems.
And this purely political gimmick that Mr. Ferraro is raising is attempting to divert attention from what has been done.
You have such a burning desire to be governor that you will sacrifice this city. You sell this city parcel by parcel so you can get the support to run for governor. You're such an ambition that it's hurting the city of Los Angeles.
Political observers expect that Tom Bradley will run for the state's top job again in November. We've heard some of the problems of cities on the decline, but what about cities on the rise? Rapidly expanding urban centers like Charlotte, North Carolina. We'll visit Charlotte and meet its mayor, Harvey Gantt, in just a moment. Walter Tucker is a dentist and an ex-city councilman whose city is adjacent to Los Angeles. Gus Newport is a native of Rochester, New York, who was an organizer and an activist before becoming mayor. James Sharp is an ex-Marine recruiter and senatorial aide and is proud of Flint's affirmative action program. Charlotte, North Carolina. It's a city of some 337,000 people, founded here at this intersection, once the crossroads of two Indian trade routes. Today, some say that Charlotte is at the crossroads of explosive growth. With a 27% black population, Charlotte is led by Mayor Harvey Gantt. Mayor Gantt presides over a city that is 27% black and that has gained over 28,000 new jobs in the past decade. He prides himself on keeping in touch with the community, even having his own TV show.
Good evening, I'm Harvey Gantt, and I want to welcome you to another edition of Ask the Mayor, the program where both you and I get to talk to each other about our city and the problems and opportunities we have to make it a better place.
Did you find that the expectations of the black community were somewhat unrealistic?
The expectations are high. I mean, first couple of days in office, people were saying, well, we're going to sit back now because our mayor's going to find us a job. He's going to, he's going to bring jobs in the community in large numbers, and he's going to solve the housing problems overnight. So what I've said is that we worked on providing and opening up some doors, and now we say to our citizens, these doors are open. Now, here's how you run through it, and here's how you go get it. But we will not take you through it. I will not pick you up and carry you to the job, but we will let you know that the access is there. But people have had expectations that somehow we're going to hand things to them, and I'm not a mayor of that type. I think those days are over.
Charlotte's spectacular growth has attracted many business people looking for opportunities. People such as Omar Leatherman, a car dealer originally from Detroit. Do you think having a black mayor in this town makes some kind of a special difference?
politicians are symbols. And anytime you have a black mayor in a predominantly white city, it says something about the city, the character of the city. And I think what it says for this southern city is that white people believe that there is equality that can be had in Charlotte, and it is not only in political life but in business life.
A new skyline signals change in Charlotte. We asked Reverend Len McDowell about community perceptions of the mayor.
Oh, I think they're very happy with Mr. Gant. He projects that kind of figure that we enjoy. I was at a party with him the other night, and he knows how to get down when it's time to get down, and he knows how to be the mayor and project that image that every city just appreciates of its first politician.
Whom did you have as a role model as a child?
Jackie Robinson. No, I say that. I'm not being facetious. That success would come to you. Jackie Robinson was a baseball player who was the best that there was. That's how he got to where he was. And so I grew up in a mentality, with a mentality that was saying that in order to succeed, young man, you really have to even be better than white folks are. You've got to be the very, very best.
What political aspirations do you have beyond your second term as mayor?
Right now, I'm very comfortable in the city of Charlotte. I'm raising a family of 4 children, and we all love this community. Beyond that, I suspect that my interest may be in Washington. I'm keenly interested in the Democratic Party and where it's going to go in the future. It seems to be in a state of disarray right now about who it ought to put in or pull closer or try to attract back to its party. And I'm of the opinion that one of the ways that we're going to do that is to decide that the days of the New Deal really are over, but that the answers don't lie in the policies now being espoused by the current administration.
Harvey Gantt seems to be a rising political star and a mayor to watch. Down in New Orleans, Mayor Ernest Dutch Morial is retiring after 2 terms as mayor because the law prohibits another term. Not only was he the first black mayor of the city, but the first black U.S. attorney in Louisiana as well. He is proud that New Orleans is more than just Mardi Gras. We found him in a reflective mood about his time as mayor.
I think it has presented some rewards, while at the same time it's been extremely demanding on time. It requires a neglect of a lot of personal things. I have 5 children. 3 of them are grown now, 2 younger children. But it has taken time away from my family at some critical points perhaps, but nevertheless I think it's been exciting and challenging.
We'll meet some lesser-known mayors with bright futures, and one of the nation's best-known mayors with some real present-day problems, Mayor Richard Hatcher of Gary, Indiana, in our next segment. Richard Arrington is a sharecropper's son. He has a Ph.D. in zoology and is a former college teacher. An avid golfer, Lawrence Crawford studied political science and is continuing his dental practice while serving as mayor. Roy West is currently the principal of Albert Hill School, as well as mayor of Richmond, Virginia. The first wave of big city black political pioneers was elected as a kind of reward for long service and courage in civil rights activities, according to Mayor Gantt of Charlotte. They were elected in cities like Cleveland, Gary, and Detroit. Steel mills and auto plants brought growth to these cities, and the slow decline of those industries is crippling them. What kind of outlook is there for cities like Gary and Detroit, whose economies have traditionally been tied to a single industry? Richard Gordon Hatcher was elected mayor in 1967. His mayorship heralded a new era in municipal politics for black candidates. The expectations were high, and much has been accomplished. But 18 years later, the problems haven't gone away. We talked with Richard Hatcher, considered to be a dean of black politics. Mayor Hatcher, what's happening to the city of Gary, Indiana?
Well, we have gone through a very difficult period where the steel industry, which is our major employer, has declined substantially nationally. And we've gone from 32,000 jobs at U.S. Steel to about 8,000. So economically speaking, we've gone through some very difficult times. We are now beginning to come out of that.
Hatcher has done a tremendous job against great odds. Let us not forget two things happened as Hatcher came in office. One was the whites reacted so bitterly. They literally formed another city outside of it. They took the heart of Gary to a place called Mayersville. They made another city. If Gary had remained Gary, if there had been a real moral commitment by white leadership for a people to learn to live together in some measure of racial harmony, it would have been still a dynamic and boom town.
What about your relationship to the Indiana Democratic Party?
That I think it says pretty clearly that the Democratic Party has decided that it is not going to give the kind of respect to blacks that it has previously, that allowed them to play a significant role in determining their own destiny within the party. I will continue to work for the day in this country when the color of a person's skin will have nothing to do with whether they can serve at any level of the government, whether they can play any role that is available to be played in this country. And I think sometimes when you do that, it upsets people.
Richard Hatcher has, I think, was one of the pioneers in black politics and has continued to try to expand that. It's just tragic that the base in Gary is not big enough for him to have had the impact on the state of Indiana and Midwestern politics that he should have had.
Detroit, Michigan is headed by Mayor Coleman Young, a blunt-talking ex-Air Force officer and cab driver who first took the oath as mayor in 1974. We asked about black-white relations in Detroit.
There's still some white people who cannot exist, will not exist if they're not in control, and who bail out the minute blacks threaten to exercise any power or control. And that's part of what has happened in the city of Detroit. Now, I think we're seeing the beginning of a turnaround. We're beginning to see an adjustment on the part of many more whites than there once were to the fact that it is possible for blacks and whites to coexist. It's even possible for whites to live in the same city with blacks where blacks have the power.
Detroit was nicknamed Motown because the dominant industry is automobile manufacturing. We spoke with Frank Judge of the Ford Motor Company.
We tend to be involved in partnerships in Detroit, probably more than other cities. I think we've heard it called the Motor City and the Renaissance City. I think it could also be called the Coalition City.
You have to do what you feel is the right thing to do. And I've never been capable of too much fancy footwork. I think that you accomplish a hell of a lot more by telling it like it is, and that's what I've tried to do.
By and large, black mayors are elected by black people. According to the Joint Center for Political Studies, 60% of black elected officials come from black-majority jurisdictions. Surprisingly, there are situations that defy the statistics. We'll be seeing such a case next, a man who served as mayor of one of our 20 largest cities. A mayor who seemed to be liked by almost everyone in his city. A mayor who is black in a city that is nearly 99% white. We'll meet James Chase of Spokane, Washington, right after these words. Lionel Wilson was born in New Orleans, practiced law in California, and became a Superior Court judge before being elected. In addition to his duties as mayor, George Henry Barnes is a scoutmaster and a minister. A Pontiac, Michigan native, Walter Moore was a county commissioner when he was elected to the office of mayor. Spokane is the second largest city in the state of Washington with 176,000 people. In 1981, Mayor James Chase was swept into office with 62% of the vote. Rather remarkable when you consider that blacks make up only 1.4% of the population of Spokane. Mr. Chase, please tell me, how did a black man become the mayor of a virtually white city?
I received the majority of the votes. I think people here will vote for the individual and not because of what color you are, and what they have found about you over the years they have known you. And that has a lot to do with it. Not what color you are, and not how much money you have, or anything like that. Is the confidence they have in you, and that helps a lot.
There are 175,000 residents of Spokane, the hub of what Northwesterners call the Inland Empire. James Chase operated a successful auto body shop for nearly 40 years before his popularity propelled him into an amazing mayoral success story.
I thought it would be a small margin, but I've said I thought I would win by a landslide. Now, my landslide is from 2 votes to 3. Then I'll classify that as a landslide. But I didn't think I would get 62% of the votes.
Mayor Chase has been married for over 40 years to Eleanor Chase. We asked her if she had encouraged him to run for mayor.
Oh, yes. I have a deep love for people. I was born and reared here, and I've been doing social work all those years. And there's a deep caring, and I know that he has it also. So it was a very natural thing, in a way. At the time, of course, I didn't realize all the campaigning and all that sort of thing that has to go on. But I knew that he loved working with people.
I've always been concerned with public affairs and people. And I've always been an organizational type of individual. And I've belonged to a lot of organizations. And I'm not bragging, but I've done well in organizations that I've belonged to.
Though Mayor Chase's low-key personality allowed him to work smoothly with his city council, his passion for youth programs occasionally brought conflict.
If this is reduced, then I'm going to keep an eagle's eye on everything else that's spent in this. And I'm going to be real, I'm going to be hard to get along with. When I see money going out, and we can't afford that for the youth.
Mrs. Chase, what's so special about Spokane?
Spokane people are genuinely friendly. They want to help. They care. And they don't care about you because of what you might have or what they may gain, but because they genuinely care.
We have many of the things beat that the other places are really struggling about. We have good people in the city of Spokane. We don't have that racial strife that you hear about, which is good. And we're in a position to really do a lot of good things, and we are doing them here.
Mayor James Chase retired at the end of 1985. In times when racial divisiveness makes mayorship of many cities an American nightmare, his story almost seems an American dream. Will his experience be a unique occurrence? Are there other cities where color doesn't count in the election of a mayor? We'll return shortly for a look at the future of black mayors. Noel Taylor is not only a former educator, but a minister who is also active with the YMCA and Boy Scouts. Barbara Mouton is a board member of the National Conference of Black Mayors, who started her career as a sales clerk. Essie Madison has been a political activist since becoming involved in the civil rights movement in the 60s and is the mother of 6 children. Where are we going? What is the future for our nation's expanding ranks of black mayors? Denver, Houston, New York, Boston? Will the numbers continue their rapid increase? And what impact did Jesse Jackson's '84 presidential campaign have on the future electability of black mayors?
There is no doubt in my mind that the Jackson candidacy led to a peaking in 1984, the likes of which we have not seen in recent years. Whether that will be sustained over time remains to be seen. It depends upon how the political parties relate to the black vote. It depends upon the nature of black political leadership.
An important support system for the future is the National Conference of Black Mayors. We spoke to Michelle Karuma at their Atlanta headquarters regarding the organization.
The National Conference of Black Mayors was formed by black mayors in the 1970s. In fact, it was formed after the Civil Rights and Voting Rights Acts were passed in the 60s, and then black mayors were elected primarily in southern states at a tremendous number. And the mayors felt that being mayors of small cities, they would be a lot more effective if they could band together and form an organization that would articulate their needs and serve as a clearinghouse and provide management and technical assistance.
This battle has just begun. We have just begun to fight.
What blacks have to do is to realize that we're the ones who can really solve the problems of the cities and of our communities by constructing our own programs and grabbing our own destiny.
So I would say to the black mayors of this country, you know, go out and tell them you're going to be fair.
We have vision, we have courage, we have tenacity, we have all the kinds of traits of leadership that it takes to manage this great country of ours.
Black mayors are elected not just by blacks, but by whites as well.
I'm determined to face the challenges of tomorrow, to be prepared to do whatever is necessary to make sure that this nation and this world is a better place.
This is our city, Pasadena, a place where many dreams can and do come true. Thank all of you.
And a black mayor, in my view, at some point in the future will hopefully be president.
I've served the city as mayor, and I believe that if we could do an effective job there, we also could do, given the opportunity, an effective job in the White House.
Our time has come. Our faith, hopes, and dreams will prevail. Our time has come.
The crystal ball is a bit cloudy, but it is certain that the black mayor's story isn't over. I'm Terry Carter, and I'm pleased to have been with you for The Making of Black Mayors.